All right, we are recording. Thank you everyone for coming today. Updates from the PMC, not super important, but we are having a meeting with the people involved with Drutopia later today. I'm not really sure if there's necessarily a set agenda for that meeting, but it'll be good to touch base with them anyway. For those of you who don't know, Drutopia is a Drupal 8 platform, kind of software as a service style, where it's specifically targeted towards nonprofits and people who want to kind of create a co-op to work together to solve some of the same problems. They're really early in development. They have kind of a vision, but I think the product itself is still in early beta. So it'll be good to kind of touch base with them and kind of figure out what we can do together, if anything, because we are kind of after the same market. So I don't know, Mike, if you know more than I do about that meeting.
Nope, Jack set it up, so I don't know what's going on with it. I'm just joining in.
Yeah, we're all kind of in the same boat where we kind of know what Drutopia is. We want to talk to them, but we don't really know much about this particular meeting. But it'll be good. It'll be good to open lines of communication, if nothing else. Infrastructure. So I don't know where we are with Pantheon and Drush. I don't know if anything's changed since the last meeting. Do you have any updates, Jeff?
Nothing new there.
Okay. So I think we're in a little bit of a holding pattern with, they're developing some new features on Pantheon that should make our life easier, but we tried to change something recently and broke everything. So we decided not to change anything until they get their new features done. So we don't want to break everything again. But it should enable us to run our own version of Drush, to set our own PHP version, to control where config files are installed for people, and hopefully even give people who are currently on Pantheon a path to upgrade to the new configurations if they want to or not. But we need to do some serious testing to make sure we don't break things in the process. So the future looks bright, present looks the same as the past. Backtopcms.org. We've got the showcase section needs to have a landing page built. I want to work on that, but I'm not sure I'll have time today. So if anyone else wants to work on that, that's totally fine. Mike, I know you have other things you want to work on backtopcms.org. I'm in the middle of sanitizing your database, and I'll get that to you after this meeting. Other things we're working on, the documentation section is looking fantastic. I got stuck last week, Tom, with trying to figure out how to put a link into the menu, because right now our menu only has one section that is more than one level deep, and that has a drawer. But what we don't want to do is add a drawer for every section of the menu. And so we had talked about removing our custom drawer solution and instead using the drop-down menu that is now in Backdrop Core. So last week I updated backtopcms.org to the latest version of Backdrop, and I started trying to rethink how we're handling those layouts with the drawer. But I got stuck on not having a design. So in the design meeting a minute ago, I pitched the idea to Wes if he's going to be working on thinking about how to clean up our homepage. Maybe you could figure out something smart we could do with that menu as well. So that's where we are with that. I think at any time we could add a link into the menu. We just need to figure out how we're going to do that. That's good, because that'll prevent us from being blocked on in the future wanting to add anything else into the menu and any sort of structure. Let's see. I don't know if you have any other updates, Tom, on documentation. No? Yes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
As far as the documentation goes, I've got everything done except for 2 pages. The URL aliases and the project installer. The project installer, I went through some of that. I need another set of eyes on, because some of that I couldn't find the way it was explained. So I don't know if I'm reading it wrong, but that page in particular, the URL aliases, I won't have a problem with. The one other was, no, the redirects, I think, was the other that I just have to go and do a little cleanup, and it's completely done.
That's fantastic.
So with the exception of Project Installer, which needs a little bit of help, everything else is finished. I did have some of the things that you had in the drawer, I copied over to the user guide, so they weren't jumping back and forth. So towards the bottom, the last 4 or 5 items on the user guide, such as upgrading from 777, those items that were over in the drawer, there's another page, same information, but I just duplicated it over on the user guide. So I don't know if that's the way you want to do it, but if somebody wants to have a user guide from start to finish, it's all right there right now.
Yeah, I think upgrading from Drupal isn't really a user task so much as a developer task, but it is information that is important to anyone who's curious about using Backdrop, which is why we put it in the handbook. But I don't know if we need to try and figure out a smarter place for that documentation to live now that we have other documentation. In general, all of our developer documentation is on api.backdropcms.org. So anything that mentions any code should be there, versus if you can click a button in the user interface, that should be in the user guide. So I don't know, like, that upgrading is kind of like a combination of both, where it's like you're going to have to move your code around, but then you also click this button in the interface. So I don't know if you have any suggestions on like a sensible place for that. If you think it's better in the user guide, what we could do is just update the paths to match the old paths on the new pages, and update the menu to point to the new pages and delete the old pages. I don't want to have 2 copies of it just for SEO reasons. That's generally bad. But if you have a better place for it in the menu system, we can update all of the old things to point at the better place. No problem.
I just put it there temporarily because there is a hierarchy there of difficulty, but I see where there's a break off. The last one being user roles and permissions. As soon as it goes into upgrade, core, pull request, developer documentation, none of that needs to be there. I can easily delete them out, and then if somebody's interested in that, they can pull it from the other guy. But there is a hierarchy of difficulty that goes from easy to very complex.
Well, maybe we leave it sort of the way it is for now, and then I know next on your to-do list is to figure out how we can make more sense in the handbook. Maybe that'll shed some light on where we should put these like important pieces of information that maybe don't belong in the handbook and don't belong in the documentation, but need to have a home somewhere that's easy for people to find.
Okay.
Great. All right, other things we're working on, backdropcms.org. The third item is the forum. I know Dr. Wilmot has been itching for a forum for a really long time. I also have seen a bunch of new people kind of poking around and asking questions in various different places. I think it would be great if we could have a place to actually send people to talk about Backdrop. I would love to see the showcase and the documentation get out the door and then full focus on the forum. So that's kind of why it's here on the list. But soon we will get there. All right, let's move on and talk about Backdrop. So exciting news in the Backdrop front is that we actually managed to write a blog post about Backdrop 1.5 and send a newsletter about Backdrop 1.5. So we are done with all of the 1.5 follow-up tasks finally, which is great. And we also had a bunch of other really exciting stuff happen in the last few weeks, like Badcamp, and Tom wrote up this amazing blog post about everything that you got out of it, which I thought was really great. If anyone else has things they want to say about Badcamp, I would not. I would just want to say that we can have as many blog posts as we want about it. So don't feel like because there's already a post about Badcamp, you can't write a post about Badcamp. So that's totally fine. Also, if you have ideas that aren't related to any camp, we would love to hear those too. So more blog posts, always welcome. And thank you everybody for jumping in on that issue and helping us figure out how to get that out the door too. So the next release of Backdrop is bug fix release 152. I checked the GitHub queue for what's on the roadmap for that, and there's only one bug, which I think has been open for kind of a long time, which I think is great. If we find more, obviously there's not just one bug in Backdrop. We might bump some of the other things that were considered less important up to that issue as soon as they get fixed. So if you have bugs you're fixing, we can tag them for the 1.5.2 release. The most important bug fix we're currently working on is the layout hero full bleed problem. Wes, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review that yet or not. No, okay, it's fine. It's kind of heady if you're not up for it today. Redesigning the homepage of backdropcms.org is definitely also a priority. But it sounds like we have like 4 pull requests for the layouts hero full bleed issue. Only one of them seems like it's realistically on the table for inclusion at this point. We just need to take a look at it and figure out if it's close enough, and if it's not close enough, what do we need to do to get it there? So Backdrop 1.6 is going to be out January 15th. We have a ton of items on our to-do list for Backdrop 1.6. I'm pretty sure not all of these are going to get in. I think in terms of priority, we want to get reference module in. We have reference module in Contrib. It's had some review. I don't know if you have any updates for us on that, Mike, since last week.
Nope, no updates on that since last week.
Okay. But if anyone else wants to give that a shot, there is a Contrib project. It doesn't have an official release, so you can't grab it from backdropcms.org, but you can grab it directly from the GitHub Contrib group. So definitely take a look at it and let us know what you think. I've also seen some activity on some of these other issues lately, like adding entity view modes to core, which is really exciting. I'd love to see that get in. We want to add a start to our media solution in Backdrop, which is just going to be a list of all of the file assets that are currently in the file manage table so that people can get in there and delete things, most importantly, but also make any changes to any file whatever's entities through a UI. We've also been talking about, I've also seen a whole ton of activity on block copy, region copy. Was it Doc Wilmot that was working on that? Yeah, so he's not here to give us an update, but it did look like there's a PR there ready for review. It looks like it's not ready for inclusion yet, but it might help to get some eyes on that to see if Doc Wilmot needs any help. It looks like one of them is easy and one of them is hard, which is kind of, I think, what we were expecting. All right. The other things we want to fix, the way menus and breadcrumbs work. It's sort of sensible logically, but not sensible to users when it's done. So it would be great to get that cleaned up a little bit. I'm not sure if we necessarily have any to-do items on how to clean that up, but we know it's a problem. So I guess getting some help identifying tasks to fix, or like what code needs to be written, might be useful. Also, something I think that should be fairly straightforward is adding page title, tabs, action links, and maybe also messages. These are the things that get printed out in your template for your layout. And if we could create a block to place those things and then make the layout smart enough that it knew if the block was rendered, then it wouldn't place the thing in where it's hard-coded into the template file. That would solve some problems with people needing to create new layouts just to control, for example, the position of the title on the page or where the tabs show up. So I'm not sure we have any code for that yet, but all of that code does already exist for panels. They already have individual blocks for each of those things. I think we might also want to include one block that includes all of those things. But I don't know, maybe separate ones are perfectly fine. So we can steal that code from panels. We also want to try and reconsider the ability to allow people to save their configuration changes in the database. This is something that kind of goes against Backdrop's decision about how configuration will be managed, but it's something that could be handy if you're in a situation where you don't have control over your file system. For example, on Pantheon, we are having some problems with the UI that allows people to copy their files from place to place. If that copies your config as well, you're likely to break your site. So if we had the ability to store configuration in the database, we would prevent the broken site problem, which I think is important. But it would be some kind of setting that would be off by default, and we could turn on as needed. So if anyone, I think this is like Drupal 8 already does this. I think there was an issue open quite a while ago about doing it for Backdrop. I'm not sure if this is the same one or a new one. But if anyone is interested in weighing in on that issue, it's 2277 in the Backdrop queue. We also have the most complicated issue on the list for 1.6 is adding a system of pageless nodes. And I'm not sure we necessarily have consensus on how to do that, but we do have some idea about some code that would be fairly easy to write to see a prototype. I don't know, Jeff, I think last time you mentioned that you were interested in working on that. I'm not sure how close we're gonna get to getting this in for 1.6, but it would be great if we could have decided on a path forward and identified anything that needs to change in order to help us move towards that path. And maybe we can get some of those smaller incremental changes in first. So if it's adding UIs for things or reworking APIs to include new things in places, we've got to kind of figure out what the path forward is to figure out how much of this we can do in Backdrop 1 versus if there's anything really crazy that needs to happen, then maybe that needs to happen in Backdrop 2. And then, as always, we have a meta issue for improving the rich text editor. This is something that I think as more people use Backdrop, there's going to be more requests for things that you can do with it. Not all of the integration with CK Editor is done. There's a bunch of stuff you could do in CK Editor that isn't necessarily turned on in Backdrop. And as soon as we get a feel for what people want to do with it, we can turn those things on or add plugins or whatever is necessary. There's also a couple of little bugs in there and cleanup tasks. So if anyone's interested in improving the editorial experience, issue 1087 is where we're noting all of the rich text editor issues. So yeah, how much of this actually gets done for 1.6 is to be determined. This list used to say more issues to be determined, but now I'm pretty sure it's less issues to be determined. But I think that a lot of this stuff is completely realistic to get in because it's a bunch of little things like entity view modes and block copy and page title blocks and stuff like that. Some of this stuff is much harder, and we'll see how much of it we can get done. All right, does anyone else have anything they want to add or discuss for Backdrop 1.6 before we move on? Okay, we can come back to it later if we want to delve into any of those things deeper. Gregory, do you want to give us an update on community growth?
Yep, it's a bit boring this week, but yeah. So we have 330 total projects on Backdrop CMS. That's +3 since last meeting. 387 total user accounts, only one added since last meeting. 58 total Backdrop country authors, not changed since last week. And we have a steady download count increase for the core download, for the core product, which is has reached now 7,220 downloads. That's +92 since last week.
That's great. Upcoming events. So next event on a lot of our calendar is the Nonprofit Developer Summit, or Nonprofit Developer Conference, Inspiration Summit. It is next week here in Oakland. It's something that I attended for the first time last year at Mike's urging, with a couple of other people also urged me to go there, and it was a really amazing experience. They do things there differently than any other conference I've been to, where you're not allowed to be on your phone, and everyone breaks up into small working groups and everyone participates in each discussion. It's not so much like one person giving a lecture, so much as a whole bunch of people talking about a problem or a solution. And we got a lot out of it. There are a bunch of amazing people who are all kind of developers for good, fighting different battles. And it's really invigorating to be in that kind of environment where you can see all of these great, smart people working together to solve the world's problems. So I'm hoping Backdrop will be part of that solution for some of those people. So I'm going to go to that conference next week, Thursday and Friday. I think Jack is heavily involved in organizing it. So they'll be there all week, but we'll see if Backdrop can get a talk. The way that works is you kind of show up in the morning and say, I'm here and interested in talking, and then they put you on the list and say, who wants to hear about whatever, and then if people want to hear about you, you can talk about your thing. So should be fun. We'll see how it goes. Oh, also, I went to the Silicon Valley Drupal meetup last night to give a talk on Backdrop. And the meeting organizer, Michael, he came to BADCamp. He saw some of our training and asked us to come and speak about Backdrop after seeing it, which was great. There were a couple of people there who were really interested, asking a bunch of really hard questions, which I thought was great. They also asked the audience if they were interested in learning more about Drutopia. And there was a very interesting reaction where people were like, oh, it's Drupal 8. Maybe we should hear about it in a year, which was not what I was expecting. I was expecting everyone to be like super curious about what the future may hold. But a lot of, I think, they feel like, oh, it's not ready yet. We'll look at it later, which was not, I don't know. It was good. But I'm like, really? Nah. Well, we'll see. It might also have just been not necessarily so much Drupal 8 isn't ready, but Drutopia isn't ready, which is also something we're hoping to talk to them about today to figure out what their plans are for the future. Other events upcoming are on backdropcms.org. If you are interested in attending an event and learning about Backdrop or are going to be speaking about Backdrop at an event, anyone can add an event onto that page. So if you're hosting an event and you want people to come there and talk about Backdrop, you can also add that. Just go ahead and create a node and we'll review it. All right. Anything else we should talk about today?
Do you know who I requested an account for api.backdropcms.org? Is that?
I can do that. Eventually, we should get those hooked up so that your regular account will work there, but I can set it up today.
In regards to that, changes there, should those be like approved by Doc Wilmot or something like that? I've been working in the issue queue on API issue queue a little bit.
I would say just create a revision.
Okay.
I wouldn't say block it on approval. And then that way, if anyone has an issue, they can still get to the version that was there before.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else we should talk about? No? Okay. What do you guys want to do next week? Should we continue to run through the regular agenda, or maybe we should stop the broadcast and talk about it offline? No necessary feedback. Okay. Well, if nobody has anything else they need to add for this week, I'm going to stop the broadcast. But don't go anywhere yet. Here we go.